Such a pity to interrupt this amazing presentation. We will just leave it there as we welcome Alfredo Ramírez. Alfredo Ramirez, in a way, took the legacy of Ciro Najle, being the new director of the Architectural Association program in landscape urbanism, and he's also the founder and the co-director of Groundlab. Groundlab is a practice that is applying landscape urbanism to projects. They have won several competitions and developing projects at the urban scale. And well, I'm very looking forward to this dialogue between the two, since both come from South America and have implemented their practice first in London. And welcome.
Thank you very much for the invitation to everyone, so I don't have to repeat every single name. I think it's a great opportunity to be here and to discuss with Ciro, which is one of the founders of landscape urbanism at the Architectural Association where I belong. And it's also a very, very difficult task for me to try to engage in a conversation with you and with your the work that you produce, which is a very sophisticated type of work. And it's shown a development since I know your works in the Architectural Association. I have to start with, I will try to be, let's say, concrete in the type of questions I ask. And one of the questions that I have is, this conference is called Landscape as Urbanism. And it claims that a landscape, probably as opposed to architecture, can be a model to organize not only cities, but territories. But you seem to have a faith in architecture, let's say, to still organize those territories and those cities, no? And perhaps it's more a way in which you work, no? It's perhaps that you understand landscape as a model that can be applied to architecture, and then architecture actually can be the one to organize those territories, as as the generic sublime exists. But is it something that landscape is, let's say, beyond that realm, and is something that you see only as an abstract model that you can extract, or is something concrete that maybe it could also lead to not only architecture, but maybe the public space, maybe the space in between those mega structures, or the space in between the buildings?
It's not that I have faith, but that I'm an architect and that I defend architecture because I love it, and I also. I don't have good memory, but I want to have good memory about the reason why we were here. And the reason why we're here, to my point of view, is to expand the capabilities of architecture, not to escape from it. So in that sense, it's that, in a way, that assessment is sort of stronger now because there is a sort of split going on between, let's say, systemic thinkers, practitioners, and doers that are linked to a certain form of academia and a certain form of investigation, which I respect a lot, and which I was part of, and a series of practitioners that operate often outside of academia or distrusting academia, and that believe in building as the only reality of architecture. And I think that, let's say, among others, those two camps are becoming increasingly deaf, or in respect to one another, among other camps that operate in the same way, no? And that's one set of two. And so in that sense, I think it's, to me, for the whole time, it has been a sort of duty to remember why we were doing what we were doing. And it's more important than ever now, in that respect. In that sense, nothing has changed, to my point of view. It's only that I have to be more explicit about certain things. One of them is the one that you mentioned, is that the landscape, to my point of view, I mean, I wouldn't say it's an abstract model. I think it's both an abstract model and a concrete reality of buildings. And yeah, so in that sense, I believe in the incorporation of landscape in buildings at all levels, both from a very technical abstract level, in which one thinks of the landscape as a sort of rhetorical way of talking about complex systems, to very literal materials that one can use, or very literal forms of spatiality and organization that one can use.
Okay. Referring to this split that you mentioned now between people that build buildings and people that maybe in academia imagine or speculate about the future, what would be the point of view you have on linking those fields? No? Because there's something about the relevancy of architecture in today's world. No? Like we know that the majority of, let's say, the urban environments, or in general, what it's built is not built by architects. No? And on the one hand, you have academia that speculates in ways that reality wouldn't allow you because of the different constraints it has. No? But at the same time, one has to bridge, no? Or at least one can aim to bridge that speculation and see how that can be relevant. Let's say, for example, with the context of Argentina or a specific context. How do you see that link that could happen, no? Between, for example, the work you do and the reality of a country like Argentina?
In that respect, I think it's tricky, the question of relevance, because the moment one talks about relevance, one starts talking about certain cliches that have been adopted and have become kind of commodities for academia. And in that respect, I kind of distrust the idea of relevance in the sense that it's a way of establishing camps or establishing ways of doing within academia. Having said that, I think that there is a certain, perhaps in that sense, probably it's in that sense that academia to me is a territory that has a certain autonomy or a certain difference to practice, and it's in its duty to think of what comes. In its duty to think of what comes next, rather than in its sort of opportunism in terms of thinking what is going on now. So in that sense, I think that the idea of relevance becomes tricky in another level, because it's, I mean, not that I want to regard it, but I think it's a much more intangible and difficult problem, the problem of relevance. It's more about the relevance that will be in the next 10 years rather than the relevance today. Or even in terms of today, I would think that our work, or any critical work, has to deal with the problems of today, the lacks and the misunderstandings or the cliches, or rather than the opportunities, the incompletitude of the today. So yeah, I'm kind of avoiding the question, but that's not the intention. I wouldn't say that that's a kind of, it's a territory of academia, though. I think that that's a territory of any progressive practice. And in academia, progressive practices find the kind of wider territory to be so.
You mentioned your lecture is called An Atlas of Argentine Genetic Sublime, no? I'd like you to expand a little bit more about that, especially in the first project that you showed at the last part, no? Like
this one.
No, there was the one in the mountains, no, where you struck some geometries.
It's this one.
Okay, well, this one. Because in that sense, you extract the actual form, no? And from there, you evolve the shape of that, no? And you say that at some point that perhaps performance wasn't really something that you were aiming at, no? And more to create a system that could evolve in itself. Can you expand a little bit more on that and how and why performance isn't something that's relevant on that part of the world?
Yeah, I didn't say that it wasn't, but it seems that it's clear that it's not. I said that perhaps I'm having a milder version of what I am saying in the past few years now. Milder in the sense that I think that these models have to have a certain kind of performative capabilities embedded and have to make those explicit and have to index working capabilities. But it is true that is more focused on formal, organizational, and figural conditions of the landscape. And in a way, that's more like a tactic. It's not. I wouldn't call that a sort of discourse. I would just say it's more like producing a certain tension with certain givens that are accepted by people that are near me, or that more or less in a similar territory. It's more like kind of teasing a number of conventional values for a while have been at work. So in that sense, let's say, now I have a milder version. I think that those kind of ecological dynamics or ways in which the ground works or the complexity of the subsoil, and not only the surface, or the sort of feedbacks or loops of feedbacks that are between systems in an ecology, all those also have to be constructed. Only that, let's say, as a tactic, as a cultural tactic, I adopted the kind of more radical position of not caring about those, or apparently not caring about those. And partly it has to do with kind of confronting certain status quo or certain image that I project as well in my work. Yeah.
I'm really sorry to interrupt this conversation, but the museum is closing and we really need to leave. I hope, yeah. I hope everybody has been thanked enough for being here today. It was really amazing. And I just wanted to tell you, if you haven't done it yet, to take a look at the webpage of the project, in which you can find the repository of the previous conferences and on which we will publish the lectures that you have assisted today. And, well, looking forward to the next event. Thank you very much.